Back to movie recaps. Today I'll show you a drama, mystery, thriller film from 2009 titled The Box. Spoilers ahead. Be cautious. In July 1976, the NSA director gets a crucial memo from NASA's Mars project, confirming they've resurrected patient Arlington Stewart. He was released from the burn unit and taken to a secret location. Since then, the patient built a mysterious device and has been transmitting it to private residences. 5 months later in Virginia, Arthur and Norma Lewis are awakened at nearly 6 by the bell. Norma opens the door, sees a black car leaving, and finds a box in their hallway. They open it during breakfast with their son Walter and find a wooden box with a knob only accessible by a key. There's also an envelope with a note that Mr. Stewart will call him at 5 in the morning, though they don't know anyone by that name. The family leaves for the day. Walter goes to school, and Norma heads to her teaching job, where her student Charles asks why she limps and shows him her foot. When she's called to the front of the class, Norma removes her hat and bag and reveals how deformed her foot is to everyone. Later, the school principal tells her they will stop the teaching discount for her son's studies, and his nose starts to cry. This news distresses her, as her family lives paycheck to paycheck. Meanwhile, Arthur goes to work at NASA. After a press conference about Viking 1's Mars findings, for which he designed the camera, he heads to the labs to continue working on a prosthesis for Norma's foot. Suddenly, one of his bosses, Norm Cahill, interrupts him. He brings a letter containing the results of his astronaut application. Unfortunately, he has been rejected because he failed the psychological test. Everyone finds this quite strange. When Norma gets back home, a man visits her with part of his face damaged. It's Mr. Stewart, who has come to explain the purpose of the box. He offers her the key to the button's cover and says if Norma presses it, 2 things happen. Someone they don't know will die, and she'll get $1 million, tax-free in cash. To prove his intentions, he gives her a $100 bill and explains the rules. He can't reveal his employees' identities, and Norma can't discuss this with anyone, except for Arthur, and she has 24 hours to decide. At 5 a.m. the next morning, Stewart comes to pick up the box, which will be reprogrammed for another family. Before Norma can ask more questions, Stewart gets in his car and leaves. A few hours later, Arthur comes home, and after sharing some bad news, Norma tells him about Stewart and the box. Unable to decide on what action to take, they choose to leave the box in their bag before heading to the theater, while Walter stays back with his child, Dana. However, even at the theater, they find themselves unable to stop thinking about the box, continually discussing it, completely unaware that someone might be observing them. So, upon their return home, they decide to take the box and examine it more thoroughly. Arthur eventually manages to open its base, only to discover that it is empty inside, which leads them to wonder how someone might know if the button is pressed. If they don't decide soon and fix their money issues, Norma will have to cancel her foot surgery. The next day, Arthur's co-worker, Jeffrey Carnes, gets a call from his wife about seeing a woman arrested at the store. Jeffrey tells her to go home and lock the doors, not knowing he's being watched by the same person following her. Arthur and Norma. After finishing work, Arthur brings the $100 bill to Norma. He tells her that it has been confirmed as genuine. Following a discussion, Norma decides to go to the front and press the button. Meanwhile, in a different area of town, the police arrive at a house. A neighbor had called 911 to report hearing a scream and a gunshot. Upon arrival, they discover a dead woman and find a little girl hiding in the bathroom. Just moments later, Stewart visits the Louis. He gives them a bag of clothes worth €1 million before leaving with a box, which he takes from someone new they don't recognize. Arthur follows him to the car and attempts to give him back the bag of clothes, but Stewart ignores him and drives away. The couple notices his license plate and writes it down. Meanwhile, at the police station, Norma's father, Dick Burns, is handling the case of a deceased woman. They find out that it's Jeffrey's wife, but Jeffrey is nowhere to be found, despite some witnesses claiming they saw him leaving the house after being shot. Later in the evening, Arthur presents Norma with the prosthesis he crafted, which fits her perfectly, enabling her to walk without any pain or limping. After that, they attend the rehearsal dinner for Norma's sister's party, where Charles is employed as a waiter. Norma's parents rave about the holiday gifts, and Arthur is the first winner. He picks the full brown box, seemingly left by a guard after Charles declares peace. He opens it with Norma at the table, finding a photo of Stewart with his full face. Later, over drinks with Charles, Arthur gives him Stewart's license plate number so he can utilize his police resources to discover this man's true identity. He also observes Charles's frequent glances, prompting him to ask another guest about him. The guest collapses upon hearing that this boy humiliated his wife in class. Meanwhile, a blue-nosed salesman informs Norma of a call. It's Stewart, warning her of repercussions for involving the police about her car. After lying down, Norma sneaks out of the room when she hears noises outside. It's Arthur, and he's aggressively confronting Charles about what he said to his wife. Not wanting to cause a scene, she decides to kidnap him and takes him back home. However, when they return to the plane, they discover the words "No exit" written on their window, and Charles once again flashes the peace sign at them. Meanwhile, back at home, Dana tries her best to keep Walter entertained, all while ignoring the shadows lurking outside the house. The window, and they're asleep when her parents return. Arthur offers to drive her home, but she says she's in a motel and makes cryptic comments hinting she knows his situation. Arthur asks for advice, and she says to look into the light, then passes with a blue nose. Seeking help, Arthur checks her bag and finds an ID stating that her real name is Sarah Matthews. He slips it into his pocket as Dana wakes up, expressing concern and urging him to leave because it's dangerous for him there. As she steps into the motel, all the visitors come out to watch her as she heads to her room. Inside, she maintains a large table covered with a map and photographs of the Lewis family. The visitors then head to the motel's water area to observe the water. Arthur goes back to Norma and shares that Dana wasn't truthful about her name or her origins. Norma then explains that this might be what Stuart meant when he mentioned having employees who could inform him of their actions. While examining Stuart's photo, Arthur suddenly realizes he's seen it previously. He moves closer to inspect a poster of the initial Viking mission to Mars, noticing that Stuart is depicted as one of the mission's workers. The following day, Stuart contacts Norma to warn her once more about the potential consequences. Norma invites him to meet in person, and when Stuart mentions he's in his garden, she sees a strange man outside, looking at him with his mouth agape. Stuart then joins her in his office, which is concealed behind NASA's wind tunnels. An NSA employee approaches NASA's superiors, requesting even more resources, this time asking for the hangar and lunar lander for activities he is strictly not allowed to explain, yet it will involve some NASA employees. Kyle is quite unhappy about this situation, but he finds himself with only one choice, which is to accept it. Arthur decides to visit Dick at the police station, hoping to see if there is any news about the license plate. It seems it belongs to an NSA vehicle. When Arthur sees the images of Jeffrey's wife and realizes that he or she is dead at the very moment they press the button, he urgently asks her to take him to the crime scene. At Jeffrey's, Arthur finds a photo of Stuart and a human resources operations manual with numbers, so he takes the photo while Dick isn't looking. Meanwhile, Norma is shopping with her mom when a woman tells her the NSA allowed it, Nathan can't stop her, and the subjects are under 40, happily married with a child. The woman also hands him a note with a number that Norma should follow on her way to the University of Richmond, advising him not to trust anyone, not even her husband, before leaving with a blue nose. Norma and Arthur head to the university to see where these numbers lead them. Norma discovers a recording of the NASA hangar and the damage caused by the moon that hit months ago. There's a clip from a NASA press conference before the tragedy. After viewing the video, two women guide Norma to where Stuart is waiting to talk to her. He explains that since being struck by the light, he's been communicating with those controlling him. He asks what Norma felt the first time she saw his face, as he believes it was likely pity. Norma's response, however, is love. She understood the deep pain that disfigurement could bring into someone's life. At least she could keep hers hidden, while he had to bear his on his visible face. After seeing him, Norma realized she would never feel sorry for herself again. Stuart, surprised by her words, asks her to hold his hand, and when she takes it, she faints. Arthur discovers a book on lightning and a newspaper article about a NASA employee struck by lightning, and as he exits the room, he's followed by library guests. He attempts to exit through the reading room, but people watch him, and Stuart's wife, Clemente, blocks his way. She says the bookshop is for employees only, and they're all tested. She takes him to another room with 3 doors. Arthur must choose wisely. One leads to salvation, the other to death. 2 take you to eternity. Clemente extends her hand, crying as she activates the gates, forming 3 water columns. Arthur chooses the second, recalling what Charles signed at the party. Touching it, Arthur is engulfed by white light. Moments later, he and the water appear in his room, floating above a sleeping Norma, who wakes as her husband and the water fall on the bed. Walter checks on them and tells Norma that last night she came home looking like a zombie, said nothing, and went to bed. Meanwhile, Kyle secretly meets the NSA employee who reveals Stuart was struck by lightning 5 months ago. NASA lost contact because he's different now. He died in the accident, but hours later, a doctor heard him in the morgue refrigerator, laughter, as he was moved to a high-security military hospital. Since then, he's shown amazing abilities like fast repair and stopped cellular deterioration. Unbeknownst to them, Stuart overhears everything. Later, when asked by the NSA employee why he chose a box, he says that houses, cars, and TVs are boxes surrounding the soul and body, which is also a box that, when it dies, is placed in another box. The host's tests require pressing the button, which helps his employees decide mankind's fate. Nearby, employees like Dana are led into a white light for another test in Massachusetts. Later that night, the Lewis family attends Sister Norma's party. While dancing, Arthur describes the light to Norma as a warm welcome, not here or there, but in between, without despair in the human mind. As usual, guards are with them, but when Arthur feels ill and steps out, it's Jeffrey who follows, not an employee. Jeffrey, armed with a gun, warns Arthur it's too late for him, but Arthur can still save himself and gets him into the truck. Walter and Norma, realizing Arthur's gone, attempt to follow, but men appear and abduct them both. Inside the car, Jeffrey presents Arthur with classified documents indicating that individuals with the frontal tree cannot be treated as employees. This is the driver's weakness. He hasn't discovered a method to enter people's minds without them noticing. Although he controls all the key agencies, like the FBI, he is still vulnerable to being killed. They have taken Arthur's child to the motel, just as they did with Jeffrey's daughter, and he is kept away from the water, which is another portal. Jeffrey had to choose between his wife and daughter for her health, as Stuart forced him to decide. The car stops at a sign where a man in a Santa jacket blocks the road, and they're suddenly hit by another car, revealing Santa as an employee. When police arrive, they only find Jeffrey's body inside. Arthur unexpectedly finds himself emerging from a NASA hangar where Kyle is waiting for him. Kyle informs him that whatever he decides to do next will have far-reaching consequences beyond what he can possibly imagine. Arthur and Norma are brought back to their home, where Stuart is waiting to conduct a final test. Stuart has trapped Walter in the bathroom after being arrested, armored, and declared dead. Now, his parents face a decision, whether to live out the rest of their lives, enjoying their wealth and taking care of their son. Arthur can kill Norma, allowing Walter to regain his senses, and the money will be placed in an account accessible when he's 18. Enraged, Arthur aims the gun Stuart provided for the test at his own head. However, Stuart clarifies that it's pointless. Killing him will just land Arthur in jail with an unsellable story, and someone else will take his place. After Stuart leaves, the couple goes to the bathroom, but it's locked. Walter is inside and can't hear them. Norma doesn't want to see Walter like this, so she asks Arthur to pull her in. They kiss passionately. Arthur takes the key, and Norma dies, as another couple in the next room presses the button on the box. Arthur goes back to the bathroom door to talk to his son, but only hears him call before the cops come and take him. Instead of a police car, he's put in a black NSA vehicle. Cahill tells Arthur not to worry, as he'll handle Walter, who watches through the window with his recovering senses. Meanwhile, Stewards collects the box from the other family's home, preparing to pass it to someone else. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.